So recently I've been doing a bit of a study on 1 Thessalonians 5:3 and how it's been understood in Jehovah's Witness eschatology. And the official website, the Jehovah's Witness Library, starts in 1951. So I've had to go back to some other sources to get back to 1931, and I haven't completed it. But going back to 1931, which was under J.F. Rutherford, he in 1931 was still seeing the efforts of the nations to try to recover from World War I. And so he was extrapolating that the peace and security efforts would be made to try to bring back world economic order, get back to kind of a pre-1914 situation. And so he even makes that interesting comment that they would try to establish peace by healing one of the heads of the beast. So that was kind of curious to me. Interesting that he was seeing in Revelation 13 that war wound that's described there, that sword stroke, and that the other members of that beast were trying to heal one of the heads. So presumably that would have been the economic burden that would have been imposed upon the United States and Great Britain as it fought this war against Kaiser Wilhelm's Germany. So trying to heal economically would bring about the peace conditions and then sudden destruction. But by 1936, he had kind of changed his view, and he had this new study where 1914 was the day of Jehovah, and it was to be distinguished from the day of the Lord, which he was now calling the day of Christ. 1 Thessalonians 5:3, the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. He's calling that the day of the Christ, and that's the one that would be unexpected and unforeseen, because obviously 1914 was predicted, and Jehovah's Witnesses, the Bible students, had warned everybody about that, and that was the day of Jehovah. But the day of the Christ was when Jesus came to the temple invisibly in 1918 and began to judge all the churches and chose Jehovah's Witnesses as his people at that time. And that was unseen. Nobody expected it. Yes, they had kind of mentioned it. They saw something was going to happen 3.5 years later after 1914, but they didn't know what. So it was an unexpected event. So he's got that as this unexpected event. But then the day of the Lord is presumably, in his eschatological scheme at that point, includes the entire time of the parousia, however long that would take, from the time of Jesus' invisible presence coming to the temple invisibly, and then ultimately coming to knock the heads of kings together at Armageddon. And it might have even included the millennial reign of Christ as the day of the Lord, the day of the Christ at that time. And then they would be fighting against Jehovah's Witnesses, who are proclaiming this harsh message of destruction against the clergy, and it's the clergy who are the ones that seem to be the focus, who will be saying peace and security, not the nations. Then in 1951, Rutherford's off the scene, and I think we begin to get Knorr in there, and Franz, and then peace and security is a result of the nations arming themselves against other nations. So you've got the Cold War beginning, and so the idea is that this arming of themselves, making fortresses, would be the source of their peace and security. But by 1953, that changes, and Jehovah's Witnesses had been fighting for their survival in the courts, the rights to preach the good news in courts around the world, and even in the U.S. and in Canada. And so it was their rights that were under attack, and that they were it was again them promoting the kingdom good news that was disrupting peace. And so at some point, that would change as they had a measure. The nations had a measure of success, or the courts had a measure of success against them, and then that would be peace. By the 1964, here we have 50 years after the 1914 event, and you've got the near nuclear exchange between Khrushchev and Kennedy. You had the Cuban Missile Crisis had taken place, and so you've got these efforts to try to bring global peace because of nuclear Armageddon. So now it's this push for disarmament, and detente. Well, later detente comes in, but it's this push for nuclear disarmament and just kind of a peace between the East and the West that would be part of that cry of peace and security. So